next speaker is the Executive Director of the Partnership for Safe Medicines, Shabbir Safdar, who I've had the pleasure of working with for a number of years. And he's here to talk about a couple of things and elaborate a bit more on some of the organizations and some of the incidents that have been reported and that he's been able to push out in order to alert the community as to what's happening, as well as some of the new legislation that has already been passed and is under implementation. Shabbir?
All right, thank you, everybody. You know, I've been white knuckling it for 6 weeks until this came together. So if I look nervous, that's why. Let me see if this actually works. Otherwise, it's going to be a super boring presentation. So I'm going to talk today for a little bit about some current counterfeit outbreaks we've had, and then also issues and a quick explanation of the drug, the DSCSA. So let me start, by the way, and just take a moment and thank the PSM staff. All these graphics, if you look at our website, all the tracking, fake Adderall with meth, everything that we do is not just me. There's a bunch of people behind me that make PSM. Sarah, Eva, Veronica, Tyler, and Liz are the PSM staff. They're not here today, but I would be remiss in not thanking them. So let me start out by talking about a problem and talking about this man. Marv Shepard, one of the founders of PSM, and until he retired last year, was a leader and the gravitas and a friend of Tom when they started PSM in 2003. Marv got his start and became concerned about safety when he was going back and forth across the Mexican border, following American tourists buying cheap medicine at bricks and mortar pharmacies in Mexico. And he was concerned because he was bringing them back to his lab at university where he was a professor of pharmacy and testing them and found that they had sometimes not enough or no active ingredient. And that concerned him and he panicked and he spoke out about it. And he had a number of high-profile speaking events, and eventually, not surprisingly enough for those that have experience with criminal cartels in Mexico, when they started to threaten his family, he found a different way to use his voice in a not so high-profile way. So it was particularly interesting to us that the clicker isn't working. Would you advance the slide, please? It does take a team. That's too many. Yes. It was particularly interesting to us when the Pharmaceutical Security Institute brought to us at the beginning of last year occurrences of fake blood thinners made with no active ingredient in Mexican border pharmacies. And they found out about it because patients and physicians were reaching out to the manufacturers saying, well, your drug doesn't work. And in fact, these things had no active ingredient. If you were getting a blood clot or a stroke, that was the problem. If you take a look at the table tents, at the pictures on your table, and you look at the middle bottle of fake Eliquis, which, by the way, has been printed in English to fool American tourists, you'll see that they got lazy. The counterfeiters got to the UPC code and then decided that they would just fill in 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Otherwise, the counterfeit looked perfect. And knowing that Americans were coming to Mexico, they packaged it to look like American medicine, but there was nothing in these things. Fast forward to just about a month ago, the LA Times followed some researchers who'd gone down to Mexico and gone to licensed Mexican pharmacies and found them, licensed pharmacists in licensed pharmacies, selling counterfeit pills made with fentanyl, counterfeit prescription pills, right? So at this point, it's just not safe. Right? We always say you have to stay within the U.S. secure supply chain, and if you don't, you are risking your life. And that is because there's no consequence for criminals like this. They sell these things to Americans, they hurt Americans, they are not afraid of being extradited. They're not afraid of being extradited from Canada, they're not afraid of being extradited from Mexico, and certainly not from anywhere farther than that. So I want to talk a little bit about because I'm not all doom and gloom, so one of the positive things about what's happening in drug safety right now, and it's the Drug Supply Chain Security Act. If you walk into a pharmacy and you know a pharmacist who will show it to you, or you get a medicine that is actually made in a single patient use dosage form. I have a medicine that's made with 30 pills, it comes sealed. You'll see this barcode and these 4 numbers. The first one is a product identifier, And the lot and expiration, I think we all know what those things are, but the last one's a serial number. That is unique to that bottle. And pretty much all the medicine in supply in the smallest saleable unit is actually labeled with one of these. That is that exact bottle. That is a level of traceability that we have never had access to in the past. And the system finishes being rolled out in November. I say finish, as every person who works on the supply chain right now is going to have a heart attack when I say that. But the last deadline is this November, and it's already helping people. So I want to give you an actual example. And I'm going to name real companies in here. They all did really good work, and it was in the Wall Street Journal. So I'm not the first person to name these companies publicly. A pharmacist in Texas received an email just like this. It was an offer from what we call a gray market wholesaler. It wasn't a wholesaler who buys directly from the manufacturer. It was a wholesaler who collects little bits of medicine from around the market and tries to then sell batches of it to bricks and mortar pharmacies. And it was a too good to be true price. Anyone who works in the drug supply chain will tell you that 5% is an enormous amount of money. To get a 5% discount for no good reason is basically a fraud indicator. But he got this, and he ordered this medicine. And when he got it, they delivered it to him. And it was an HIV medicine. It was a life-saving, and for me, who lived through the HIV crisis, a miracle drug. And he got this sales log. This is the law. And until November, every medicine has to come with a sales log. And it had traveled through AmerisourceBergen. And he said, wait a second, this medicine is cheaper than what my buying group buys from AmerisourceBergen. How can that be? This should not be possible. So he emailed a contact at AmerisourceBergen and said, here's the serial number. Tell me how it is that you told me my buying group gets the best price, but clearly someone else is getting a better price. And because AmerisourceBergen, all the wholesaler community, and the manufacturers have long ago invested hundreds of millions of dollars in serializing the system and keeping these records, they actually replied to him and said, that bottle was never in an AmerisourceBergen warehouse anywhere in this country. At which point, the pharmacist took the entire batch and sent it back. No patient received medicine from that shipment. That system isn't even truly done being rolled out, at least until the end of this year, and it has already protected patients. And this is huge, right? This is absolutely huge. Today, any pharmacist can do this kind of trace with the serial number on a bottle and start with the manufacturer and walk through with a phone call for every supply chain participant and find out where that medicine has been. Canada doesn't have that system. We love you, Canada, but they don't have that system. Mexico certainly doesn't have that system. And at this point, knowing what we know about the Mexican supply chain, I'm not even sure I would trust what anybody said about anything that came out of that. So this is a really important system. It's really safety conscious. I'm not exaggerating when I say that the industry has spent hundreds of millions of dollars implementing this, and it's very, very helpful for protection. This is actually the larger view on this very busy slide of what this ring looks like. And this ring is not a small ring. We're talking about $250 million of diverted or counterfeit product. What was happening is that the criminals will buy either sealed bottles of medicine or empty bottles from patients, often poor patients, and then they'll fill it with whatever pills they happen to have handy. So instead of the HIV medicine that's supposed to be in there, they'll put Excedrin or Tylenol or chalk, or in one case, an antipsychotic, which if you are not experiencing a psychotic break is not something you should take. And they will sell it to a criminal wholesaler who will fake the sales history paperwork and then put it into the supply chain. And that's the kind of entity that was advertising to this Texas pharmacist. This crime is not a new crime. It actually has been happening. There was just a trial in San Francisco where I live that finished up in January of a $300 million ring. This crime, at current count, is at least $250 million of product. And the folks who are chasing the bad guys down are not even done. They're not even done finding all of the product that is being shipped this way. So this is the other way. We have Americans who are being fooled by foreign pharmacies, some that are often not pharmacies in Canada, but also real pharmacies in Mexico that are doing the bad thing. And then we have criminals inside the U.S. who are polluting our supply chain as well.